Hello people of the internet, welcome to episode 59 of Paint to Life, the YouTube channel where we take tiny plastic miniatures, throw some acrylic paint on them, and breathe life into them with storytelling so you might learn something new on the subject or take the story and make it your own. Tonight's a special episode and then I'm going to be channeling my inner Leif from Devs and Dice, and I won't be painting a miniature, I'll be creating something from scratch, painting it, and yes, still telling a story. Also, at the end of the episode, there'll be another chance to enter my giveaway coming up in August. You can enter this multiple times, so make sure you watch to the end to find out how. And without further ado, I'm GM Atank. Let's get painting. So, if you missed last episode where we learned about the subterranean creatures known as Ankhegs, you can check it out in the description below or at the end of the episode. Who here plays D&D? So count it here. 5, 6. So some of you may know some of the first world problems we experience as D&D players with dice rolls. Dice landing cockeyed or dice falling off of a table. Some people just can't seem to roll dice well without looking like a pleb. Some options are dice trays. I mean, here's one. It's pretty solid, made of wood. It's got a nice felt bottom. Here's another one. It's a little bit of a travel kind you can take with you on the go. These basically keep your dice on the table, so it's a lot easier to read the results for everyone, and you don't have to worry about any caltrops falling on the floor. For those of you who don't know, a caltrop was a medieval device used to slow down or hamper infantry. It looked kind of like this, and a die 4 is somewhat similar in its efficiency and potency, second only to Lego. There are also dice rolling towers. These are fun because they make a really satisfying noise as the dice clatter down them, and they keep the dice in play. I had this dice tower made out of cherry wood, and I've had it for the better part of 2 decades now. It served me very well. I used it during our giant ape versus T-Rex episode. That was 49 of Paint to Life. You would have seen it in the show. Now I went online and I found no multi-facing dice towers. Now, what does that mean? You see, DMs when playing typically play behind a screen. It's a privacy screen, it keeps things from the players. And our dice tower would point towards us. But sometimes, when playing DM, if you're a good GM, there are moments of sheer suspense, anticipation, when it's all in the line, and it's good for the players to maybe see what you roll. It's a big, suspenseful, brought up moment, and what I end up having to do is I have to turn my dice tower to face the players so that when I drop the die in, they can see the results. But that's a pain, and there's no fun in that. So, I knew what to do. I came up with a very rudimentary design, decided to build it, and paint it to life. Now, the assembly video that's going to be playing up here during the episode will be released on Tuesday. It's a long one with my commentary, so if you want to try and build one of these yourself, trust me, it's easier than it looks. You can check that out on Tuesday on the channel. But GM Atank, I came tonight for a story. Yes, I know, and I've got one of those for you too. This is the story of the cursed Dunstead Tower. Now, a long time ago, in just about 700 AD, in a very young and up-and-coming England, some settlers founded a village, just of about 200 people, named Ashford, near a forest of ash trees. The Bishop Francis Ferderoy had come to England from the Vatican to help assure that the recently converted English Christian countryside would remain that way. He was a very powerful figure in the community, and he led his papal services from inside a large barn. But Francis wanted something more. The village was getting bigger, times were good. So he commissioned construction of a new abbey to serve the villagers and spread his influence into the surrounding countryside. Over 1 year, he pushed the people extremely hard. He prioritized the building over many of their typical tasks, including tending to the fields and crops. He threatened them with damnation in the eyes of God if the abbot wasn't completed by the end of the year. That's one way to get your employees to work hard. The building was completed right before the winter snows came, and it was a beautiful one of the nicest in the country. However, as you can probably imagine, the winter was particularly bad. Bishop Ferderoy gave shelter from the cold to the destitute, and his clergy shared the Lord's bounty with the many villagers who had nothing to eat. It was only in the spring, when the ground thawed, that they attempted to destroy the evidence of their crimes. Caught digging graves by the villagers, it was discovered that the bishop had been murdering the very homeless people who had come to him for help, and then using the dead as the very source of the food that he had been sharing with the village. Incensed, the crowds trapped Bishop Ferderoy and his clergy, set fire to the structure, burning them alive inside the abbey. Now, centuries would pass. Hedgerows and foliage would hide the sins of a bygone settlement. The year was 1066 during the Norman conquest of England. Any of you who watch Vikings might know that that's Rollo in France pushing up. Now, a group of soldiers from France, commanded by the steadfast Albert Lafayette, came upon a slight hill near an ash forest. He recognized this as a great location for a defensive fortification, so they cannibalized the ruins of a tall structure for the majority of the building materials they needed. Little did they know that these were indeed the ruins of the lost Abbey of Ashford. Now, the fort took 2 years to construct. It was finished in 1068 and it was named Dunstead Tower. Albert was tasked with its upkeep and defense. Now, here was a man from a respectable family from a long lineage of warriors. Albert was loved by his troops for being a tactical genius, a ferocious fighter, but most importantly, he was a gentle soul. He was able to empathize with his men and his enemies for that matter. This quickly began to change. Men in the garrison would awaken to the sounds of roaring fires and loud, terrible screams from unknown origins at night while they were sleeping. There would be thick blankets of smoke billowing in the air, appearing from nowhere and disappearing just as quickly. Albert, frustrated with these unsolved mysteries, would grow more and more stern with his punishments. Now, future historians believe that a general lack of nutrition and sleep deprivation due to the presumed hauntings likely exacerbated a pre-existing condition that caused Albert to become mentally unstable. The commander would begin executing people for the most trivial of offenses, including trespassing on lands which belonged to the crown, and he became a strict vegetarian. Being caught eating meat, of which of course mutton, which was a staple in a soldier's diet, was punishable by 50 lashes. Now, having heard enough of Albert's barbarism, he was ordered by London to cease all executions. So, instead, he began a campaign of torture and disfigurement instead. He invented methods to cause immense suffering, drawn out over days and weeks, yet not death. Ultimately, having enough of the inhumanity, his troops rallied against him and his most loyal followers. They restrained them and bricked them all up inside the walls of the main tower inside of Dunstead Tower. It is written that their desperate screams would last for 4 days and 4 nights until finally they ceased. With such a sordid history, Dunstead Tower was ultimately abandoned. It would stay that way. After centuries of disrepair, the tower would crumble and again become one with the land. In 1347, a wealthy English noble named Sir Reginald Dwyer was gifted a great expanse of land by King Charles II and would move his extended family there. While surveying for a location for a manor house, the unidentified ruins of Dunstead Tower were rediscovered, and Reginald would repurpose these materials to build many houses for his kin. But the foundation of the main tower was still intact, thus he would incorporate it into his manor house. Many people died during the construction of this mansion. Some were crushed by falling rocks, one drowned in a shallow puddle after being rendered unconscious, and 3 children disappeared without a trace during the construction. Sir Reginald had an extremely difficult time staffing and attracting peasants to settle and farm his lands. Many people across the countryside considered the ash forest haunted and cursed. Ultimately, after sinking his entire fortune into his new land, Sir Reginald had a brilliant idea to dispel any negative stigmas that had persisted. He held a massive ball and invited all sorts of nobles from across the lands. He offered to pay for their travel, and he had lavish gifts to offer for all who would attend. Now, it was the night of the party. In attendance were over 400 people, and a horse drawing a wagon got spooked by something, and it ran right into the main tower section of the house, which killed the horse, but the impact of the cart caused a hole to be broken in the stone masonry. Inside, 7 old, decayed skeletal bodies were arranged in an unholy manner that caused all who gazed upon them to be sickened, or in some cases faint. Now, that very week, the first instances of the Black Plague began making their appearance in England, starting with the nobles who had visited Sir Reginald Dwyer's ball. The Black Death was the most fatal pandemic recorded in human history, causing anywhere from 50 to 200 million deaths, including Sir Reginald Dwyer and his entire family. Now, beyond Dwyer House, the land stayed empty. Eventually, the Crown would take control of the entirety of the land. Lumber mills were erected and cleared most of the ash forest of wood, and all the ruined houses and stonework were repurposed into cobblestone for large roads crisscrossing the countryside. Today, its cobblestones have been covered by asphalt, but the largest section of the road that is still in use today is now a highway, and there are over 10,000 cars that drive over it every day. Strangely enough, this one small section of road has more accidents per stretch of highway than anywhere else in Europe, and additionally, a very high percentage of those accidents are fatal, with even the most seemingly mundane collisions occasionally bursting into flames. Dunstead Tower. Alright, here's the finished version of Dunstead Tower, made for my D&D group, with the 2 holes in the top, so that you can roll your dice towards the DM, or towards the players. The how I made this video goes up on Tuesday, and if it's really not that hard, and if you'd ever consider something like this for your own D&D group, I strongly suggest you check that out. Also, the giveaway, this Dark Souls Black Dragon Calamite edition, I've opened it up and got it started, just to get it prepared. Here she is, or he. Remember, you can enter many times, including last week's video or this week's video. Watch the video, leave a comment and a like, and in your comment say that you want to be entered. The winner will be picked in August, and they will get the following. You'll get to name this dragon, you'll get to pick a theme for the dragon, pick 2 colors, and give me a biome. And what I'll do is I'll take all of your information, I'll whip something together, I'll paint it, I'll make a paint to life episode that you kind of inspired, and then when I'm done, if you'd like, I'll ship you the finished product. Head on down to your friendly local gaming store, pick up some brushes and some paints. I still hear emails from people who are watching this channel who just started painting as a result of it. I'm so glad to hear that. It's a great hobby to have, and I'm glad you're here with us. If you like my content, please like, share, and subscribe if you haven't yet already. It really helps the channel grow. I much appreciate it. That's all I have for tonight. Wave 15 just came out, so I want to get this episode wrapped up so I can start painting some new ones for some new episodes. Otherwise, I'm GM Atank. Wash your hands, people. Hello, people of the internet. Oh, cats.